The wind howled through the cracked windows of the control room, rattling the frame as if the storm outside was angry at being kept at bay. Inside, the hum of machinery was the only constant sound, interspersed with the occasional click of a keyboard or the buzz of an intercom. Commander Ash Thompson stared at the holographic map sprawled across the room, her fingers frozen above the console. Something was wrong. She could feel it, deep in her gut. She'd been with the fleet for over 10 years, through countless missions and battles, but today felt different. The aliens, Arvanites, they called themselves, had been friendly, cooperative even, until they weren't. "Commander, you need to see this," came the voice of Lieutenant Harris, his tone sharp, urgent. Ash turned, her boots clicking against the cold metal floor as she stepped toward him. The screen flickered, showing a live feed from the Arvanite capital on their home planet, Pytheria. A massive black ship, so sleek, so enormous, docked in the city center. No one had expected this. Not today. Not ever. "They're attacking," Harris muttered, his face pale. Ash felt her heart race. "No," she whispered. "Not after everything." The Arvanites had welcomed humanity with open arms after their first contact 3 years ago, offering advanced technology, peaceful exchanges, and a partnership that had been the envy of the galaxy. In return, humanity shared its own innovations, medical breakthroughs, military strategies, everything they could offer. It had seemed like a utopia. But now? Now they were turning on them, and Ash couldn't help but wonder why. The Arvanites had been calculating, always playing their cards close to their chest. She'd never trusted them entirely, but this? "This is an invasion," she said, her voice low, determined. "We're outgunned, outmanned," Harris said, shaking his head. "And we're too far from Earth for reinforcements." Ash narrowed her eyes, scanning the map again. The fleet had been spread thin after years of peacekeeping missions, and this attack came with no warning. The Arvanites weren't just waging war, they were going for total domination. They knew humanity's weaknesses, their defenses, and now they were exploiting them. The shock of it made her blood run cold, but it also ignited something else in her, something fierce. "We won't wait for reinforcements," Ash said, a steely resolve settling in her chest. "We fight. We take back what's ours." Harris hesitated. "Commander, are you suggesting we take the fight to them?" "Yes," Ash said without flinching. "We're human. We adapt. We survive. And we fight back." The plan was simple. Ash's fleet, though small, had the advantage of experience and agility. The Arvanites might have the technology, but humanity had something else, tenacity. While their ships lacked the sheer firepower of the invaders, they had the tactical genius that had always seen them through the darkest moments in history. Humanity had survived the impossible before, and they would do it again. "We'll need to move fast. If we wait too long, they'll lock down the entire planet," Ash continued, her mind already racing with strategies. "We'll deploy the vanguard ships on the outskirts, make it look like we're retreating. The Arvanites will think they've won, but that's when we strike." Harris nodded, though his face betrayed his unease. "Understood. But, Commander, what about the civilians? We can't just leave them behind." Ash's jaw tightened. "We won't. We'll get them out. We have to." She turned back to the map, already drafting the movements in her mind. This wasn't just a battle, it was a statement. Humanity wasn't going to roll over and let the Arvanites destroy everything they had worked for. The invasion might have been a surprise, but Ash and her crew wouldn't be caught off guard. As she made the final adjustments to the fleet's positions, her comms officer broke through the static, his voice trembling. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Earth fleet." No response from Central Command. Ash's breath caught in her throat. A chill ran through her veins. If Earth had fallen, the last hope for humanity was here, on this forgotten world, in the hands of this small fleet. "Send the order to deploy," Ash said, her voice cold with determination. "And don't stop until we win. With one final glance at the map, she activated the fleet's command system, setting the wheels of fate into motion. There was no turning back now. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The fleet moved silently through the cold vacuum of space, each ship a shadow against the vast expanse of stars. Ash Thompson stood in the observation deck of the lead vessel, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes locked on the swirling blue and green planet below. The Arvanite fleet, a massive armada of sleek, obsidian warships, had already begun their descent to Pytheria's surface. They were relentless. And Ash was determined to stop them. "Commander, we've received confirmation," came the voice of Lieutenant Harris from the communications panel behind her. "The Vanguard ships are in position, and the first wave of civilians is en route to the escape shuttles. We're on schedule." "Good," Ash replied, her voice firm. "But don't get comfortable. This is just the beginning. The real fight starts now." She turned to face the bridge crew, each one locked in their own task, their faces a mix of determination and unease. They were ready. But Ash could feel the weight of responsibility settling deeper with every passing second. This mission wasn't just about saving a planet, it was about sending a message to the galaxy that humanity would not fall easily. "Captain Moore," she said, her eyes meeting the leader of the tactical division, a grizzled officer with a reputation for quick thinking. "What's our status on enemy movements?" Moore tapped a series of controls, and a holographic map of the surrounding space flickered to life. "The Arvanites are tightening their formation, Commander. They're preparing to bombard the planet's surface. They've also deployed smaller scout ships, looks like they're testing our defenses." Ash's jaw clenched. "They won't get away with this. We've been preparing for this day," Moore continued. "We're ready. But they have the numbers on us. We'll need to make every shot count." The sound of clashing metal echoed in the distance as another message came through, this one more urgent. Ash's eyes widened as she listened to the report. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Vanguard ships. They're not responding to our calls. It seems they've been ambushed." Ash's heart skipped a beat. The Vanguard ships had been humanity's first line of defense, designed to draw the enemy away from the planet's surface. If they had fallen, the entire plan was in jeopardy. "All units, engage," Ash barked, her voice sharp with the edge of a commander who had no time to waste. "We're not letting them push us back." The crew sprang into action, the air alive with the hum of their swift preparations. The bridge shook slightly as the ship's engines roared to life, propelling them into the heart of the battle. Ash stood tall, eyes steely, watching as the enemy fleet continued its relentless advance. There was no turning back now. "We're approaching their formation," Moore called out from the tactical station. "Locking weapons systems." "Hold your fire until I say so," Ash ordered. "We need precision, not chaos." The minutes stretched long and tense as the two fleets closed the distance. The bridge hummed with barely contained energy. Every officer knew what was at stake. Ash could feel the pressure mounting as the distance between them and the Arvanite warships diminished. "Now," she commanded. The fleet erupted into action. The sound of laser fire split the air as the human ships launched their first barrage. It was precise, calculated, a strike to weaken the enemy's shield systems. But the Arvanites weren't caught off guard. They responded with ferocity, launching their own weapons in a devastating counterattack. Ash's stomach tightened as the battle unfolded before her. The Arvanites were strong, but humanity was resilient. She knew they couldn't afford to take hits like this for long. Every moment mattered. "Target their lead ship," she ordered. "We take down their command vessel, and the rest will fall in line." The battle raged on, flashes of light illuminating the void of space. Ash watched, almost detached, as her fleet fought with every ounce of strength. The screams of her crew were silent over the comms, but she could feel their presence, their fear, their determination. "Enemy ship has been disabled," Moore shouted, his voice tinged with disbelief. "We did it, Commander. We actually did it." Ash's eyes narrowed as the holographic map updated. The Arvanite command ship, now crippled, was drifting, its remaining forces scattering in disarray. It wasn't over yet, but this victory was the opening humanity needed. "Keep pressing," Ash said, her tone unwavering. "This isn't over. We need to finish what we started." But just as the human fleet began to regroup, another report came in. This time, it wasn't good news. "Commander, there's a new wave of ships incoming, too many to count. They're not like anything we've seen before." Ash felt her blood run cold. The Arvanites had been holding back. And now, they were bringing their full might to bear. "We'll be ready," Ash said, her voice full of fire. "We're human. We don't back down." As the dark shapes of the new fleet began to materialize on the edge of the battlefield, Ash's gaze hardened. This was far from over. The real war was just beginning. The battle raged in space, but Ash Thompson had learned long ago that war wasn't just fought in the vastness of the cosmos. It was fought in the minds of the commanders. Her mind was a battlefield now. She stood alone in the darkened briefing room, the faint hum of the ship's systems the only sound accompanying her. The holographic display flickered, showing the scattered human fleet, trying desperately to hold its ground against the overwhelming forces of the Arvanites. "Commander Thompson," came the voice of Lieutenant Harris through the comm, breaking her reverie. "We're getting reports from the Vanguard's survivors. They're holding their own, barely, but the reinforcements are still out of range." She clenched her fists, feeling the tension in her muscles like a coiled spring. The Vanguard's crew was one of the finest humanity had to offer, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. If they fell, so would the rest of the fleet. And that meant Pytheria was lost. She didn't let herself linger on the thought. There was no room for doubt now. "I'll be up in a minute," Ash said, her voice steady despite the turmoil that churned inside. "Prepare for full engagement." The doors to the briefing room slid open, and Ash stepped into the control center. The entire crew was focused on their terminals, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screens. The tension in the air was palpable. "Report," Ash ordered. Captain Moore, his face set in a grim mask, glanced up. "The enemy has deployed a new type of ship. We've never seen anything like it. It's moving faster than our interceptors can react." "Could it be a new weapon?" Ash asked, her brow furrowing. "It's possible. We're analyzing the data now, but it seems like they're adapting to our tactics," Moore replied, tapping his terminal. "They're also jamming our long-range communications. We've lost contact with several of our frontline ships." Ash's thoughts flashed to the moment when the Arvanites had first appeared, massive, monstrous ships that struck fear into even the bravest soldiers. Now, the enemy had found a way to counter the humans' most effective strategies. She knew they couldn't keep relying on brute force. The human spirit, however, was never defeated by brute force alone. "Time to turn the tide," Ash said, her voice low but full of conviction. "We're going on the offensive." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Moore raised an eyebrow but didn't question her. "We'll break their formation," Ash continued, her eyes locking with each of the officers around her. "Divide and conquer. Moore, take the tactical team to the fighter bay. Harris, prepare the communications relay to bypass their jamming. We'll need to contact the Vanguard survivors." She turned to her executive officer, Commander Lin, who had been silently observing the unfolding events. Lin, a stoic figure, nodded slowly. "Understood, Commander," Lin said. "But how do you intend to keep our fleet intact while we make our move? The enemy is closing in." Ash's lips tightened. The human fleet was outnumbered, and they could not afford to make another mistake. She paced across the room, her thoughts calculating the next steps. "We draw them in," she said, her voice unwavering. "The Arvanites think they can outlast us, but they underestimate our adaptability. We'll set a trap. I want a decoy ship to feign retreat. Once they follow, we'll strike with everything we've got." Lin's eyes narrowed, as though considering the gamble. But in a fight like this, there was no other choice. "Understood. It's risky, but it might work," Lin replied, nodding. Ash stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of their situation pressing down on her. There was no guarantee this plan would succeed. But she knew one thing with certainty: humanity wasn't a species that folded under pressure. They didn't give up. And she wouldn't either. "All right," Ash said, her voice steady as she turned back to Moore. "Get ready, Captain. We launch in 10 minutes." The human fleet divided as the plan took shape. Ash's command ship stayed in the center, surrounded by smaller, faster vessels. The decoy ship, a stripped-down cruiser, moved in the opposite direction, a beacon of vulnerability. The Arvanites, confident in their pursuit, began to follow. Harris monitored the enemy's every movement, his face lit by the ever-changing data on his screen. "They've bitten the bait," he reported. "They're splitting off to chase the decoy." "Perfect," Ash murmured. "Now, let's finish this." She keyed in a command, and the human fleet surged forward, cutting through the darkness like a blade. The Arvanites hadn't anticipated the shift in tactics. Before they could adjust, Ash's fleet unleashed a barrage of firepower. Energy blasts cut through enemy shields, sending ships spinning into space like discarded debris. Ash's heart raced as the human fleet began to make their stand. For every ship they lost, they took down an Arvanite. The battle was far from over, but humanity had finally gained the upper hand. "We're not done yet," Ash said, her eyes narrowing as the final wave of Arvanite reinforcements arrived. The battle had only just begun, and the true test of humanity's strength was still ahead. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated through Ash Thompson's chest as she stood at the command center, her fingers hovering over the control panel. The chaos of the battle outside had reached a fever pitch, but inside the heart of the flagship, a tense silence had fallen. Humanity's fate rested on the razor's edge. The human fleet had managed to push back the initial wave of Arvanite ships, but Ash knew that this was just a reprieve. The Arvanite reinforcements had arrived, an unstoppable surge of firepower and rage. She had only one card left to play, one that could either seal their victory or doom them all. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris's voice broke through her thoughts, his eyes wide with urgency. "The enemy's forming a new formation. It's unlike anything we've seen. They're organizing for a full-scale assault." Ash's eyes narrowed as she scanned the tactical display. The Arvanite ships were massive, hulking behemoths that outnumbered her fleet at least 2-1. Yet the human ships had proven resilient, each battle a testament to their ingenuity and defiance. But that ingenuity was running out of time. "How long until they're within firing range?" Ash asked, her tone sharp. 5 minutes, Harris replied, his voice tight. Ash clenched her jaw. The odds were not in their favor. Humanity's ships, though fast and agile, could not withstand the concentrated firepower of the Arvanite fleet. She had no illusions about that. But she had never been one to surrender to fate. There had to be a way to turn the tables. "Prepare the secondary defense systems," Ash said, her voice cold and controlled. "Activate the disruptors and set the decoys on a timed sequence. We're going to make them chase shadows." "Understood," Harris replied, already tapping in commands. Ash turned to Captain Moore, who stood by the tactical console, his eyes grim. The old officer had seen many battles, but this one was different. It was personal. "Moore," Ash said, "I need you to get the fighters into position. We're going to need every hand on deck for this." "Already done," Moore said, a rare hint of approval in his voice. "We'll make sure they know not to underestimate us." Ash nodded. She wasn't going to let the Arvanites walk all over humanity. Not now, not ever. She glanced at the viewports. In the distance, the Arvanite flagship loomed like a predator, its massive hull casting a shadow over the battlefield. It was the heart of their invasion, and Ash intended to strike it down. "Command, we're ready," Moore reported. "Let's give them hell," Ash said, stepping toward the center of the room. She gripped the edge of the console, her eyes focused. "Initiate the attack sequence. Full throttle." The ship's engines roared to life as it surged forward, cutting through the void with a precision only humans could achieve. The decoys, bright, flashing targets shot out into the darkness, their blinking lights a lure for the Arvanite ships. As expected, the enemy took the bait. Their forces split off in pursuit, abandoning their formation in a chaotic scramble. Ash's lips curled into a tight smile. Now, Harris. Hit them with everything we've got. The human fleet unleashed a torrent of firepower. Missiles streaked through space, ion blasts crackled in the blackness, and the fighter squadrons darted in and out of enemy lines like hawks swooping in on their prey. It was a brilliant, coordinated strike that caught the Arvanites off guard, throwing their forces into disarray. Direct hit on their lead ship. Moore called out, his voice a mix of disbelief and excitement. We've broken their formation. But Ash's triumph was short-lived. A cold shiver of dread crept over her as she watched the Arvanite flagship retaliate. Its weapons charged, and the ship fired a devastating volley that tore through the ranks of human fighters like a hot knife through butter. "Damn it," Ash muttered, her fists clenching. The fighter squadrons had been decimated in moments. The human fleet's numbers were dwindling rapidly. "We need to finish this," she said, her voice steady despite the rising panic in the back of her mind. "Move in closer. We're going to take them down from the inside." "Commander, they're expecting a frontal assault," Lynn, her second in command, said from the back of the room. "It's a suicide run." Ash didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice. If we don't act now, they'll destroy us." The bridge fell silent as everyone realized the gravity of her words. But there was no other way. The only way to win was to put everything on the line. Ash turned to the helm officer. "Prepare for the final approach. Full power to the forward shields." The crew sprang into action, the ship's systems humming with life as they sped toward the Arvanite flagship. The looming ship grew larger with every passing second, its massive cannons ready to tear them apart. "Brace for impact," Ash said, her voice unwavering. "This is it." Just as the Arvanite flagship aimed its cannons, Ash slammed her fist on the console. "All hands, fire." A wave of concentrated energy shot out from the human ship, slamming into the heart of the Arvanite vessel. For a split second, the universe held its breath. And then, an explosion of light. The human fleet had made its stand.